The fire was everywhere. The thick smoke swallowed the freeway, turning the night into a blinding, suffocating haze of orange and black. Flames leapt from wrecked cars, their twisted metal frames glowing in the inferno. The air was filled with the sound of sirens, distant screams, and the roar of the wildfire tearing through everything in its path. Paramedic Ben Harris pulled his mask tighter against his face, scanning the wreckage as he and his partner, Rachel Ortiz, sprinted toward the burning car. "Over here!" a firefighter shouted, pointing to a crumpled sedan wedged between an overturned lorry and a barrier engulfed in flames. The vehicle groaned under the heat, glass shattering as the fire inched closer. Ben rushed forward, heart pounding, and peered through the broken window. Inside was a man, mid-40s, bloodied and gasping for breath. His hands clutched the steering wheel, as if holding onto it would keep him anchored to life. "We got you, sir," Ben called, trying to mask the urgency in his voice. "Hang in there." Rachel was already at the passenger side, yanking at the door. It wouldn't budge. Ben locked eyes with the man. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man's eyes fluttered open and he rasped out, "Emily, my daughter, get her out first." Ben hesitated, feeling his gut twist. "We're gonna get you both out, okay? Where is she?" The man, David Wallace, coughed, his body trembling with pain. "She's safe. She was ahead of me in another car. Please, tell her. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm sorry I wasn't there." Rachel finally managed to force the door open, and together they carefully pulled David from the wreckage, supporting his broken body between them. The moment they stepped away, the car erupted into flames, sending a shockwave of heat through the air. David groaned in agony, his grip tightening on Ben's arm. "Promise me," he gasped. "Promise you'll tell her." Ben swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the man's words sink deep into his chest. He nodded. "I promise." They got David onto a stretcher and rushed him toward the waiting ambulance. Rachel worked feverishly, stabilizing him, but Ben could see the truth in his fading eyes. David wasn't going to make it. As the ambulance doors slammed shut and they sped toward the hospital, David's breathing grew ragged. "Emily," he whispered again. Ben leaned in close. "She's okay," he said softly, gripping David's hand. "We'll get the message to her, I swear." David exhaled a shuddering breath, and with a small, tired smile, his eyes fluttered shut. The monitor flatlined. Rachel pressed her fingers to his neck, shaking her head. "He's gone." Ben leaned back against the wall of the ambulance, his hand still gripping David's lifeless one. He had promised. Later that night, back at the station, Ben sat in the dim locker room, head in his hands. The smell of smoke clung to his clothes, his skin, his soul. The promise he made gnawed at him. He needed to find Emily. She had to know. Rachel came in quietly, holding her phone with a grim expression. "Ben," I looked her up. His stomach dropped. "And?" Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. She didn't make it, Ben." He stared at her, uncomprehending. "She was in another car, one of the first ones hit by the fire. They found her hours ago." The world seemed to tilt. "No," he muttered, standing abruptly. "No, that's not possible. He thought she was safe. I told him she was okay." Rachel's eyes glistened with tears. "You didn't know." Ben ran a shaking hand through his hair, his chest tightening with the cruel irony of it all. He had given David hope, a peaceful passing, but it had all been a lie. Emily was gone before he ever spoke those words. "Then who was I promising?" he whispered, staring at the wall, his voice hollow. Rachel squeezed his shoulder. "We did what we could." Hours later, while sitting alone in the ambulance, Ben's phone buzzed, a private number. Frowning, he hesitated before answering. "Harris." Static crackled on the line, and then a voice, soft, familiar. "Dad, I'm safe." Ben's blood ran cold. He shot up from his seat, his heart hammering in his chest. "Hello? Emily?" Silence. His hands trembled as he pulled the phone away and checked the call details. The timestamp read 2:43 a.m. Emily had been confirmed dead at least 5 hours earlier. He stared at the screen, the words sinking in like lead. Rachel walked up, noticing his pale face. "Ben, what's wrong?" He showed her the phone, his voice barely audible. "Emily." She called me. Rachel's face twisted in confusion and fear. That's not possible." "I know," he whispered, "but I heard her. She said she's safe." The two of them sat in silence, the weight of something far beyond their understanding pressing down on them. The following day, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that there was unfinished business. He drove to the site of the fire, standing where David's car had once been. The air smelled of charred metal and ash, but the place was eerily quiet now. Kneeling, he pulled something from his pocket, David's watch, retrieved from the wreckage. He placed it on the ground, whispering, "I tried, man. I really did." As he stood to leave, the wind picked up, carrying a faint whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "Thank you?" Ben turned, but there was no one there, just the burned remains of what once was. Walking back to his ambulance, he glanced at his phone one last time. The call was still there, a silent reminder that some promises could never be truly broken. Somehow, Emily had reached out. Maybe it was her way of fulfilling her father's final wish. Or maybe some bonds could never truly be severed, even by death.